Welcome to ModelRailroadDesigns.com. Today we have for you an N-scale 8x7 foot prototype inspired switching layout set in Waterville, Maine in the US. It's a relatively compact layout, still we managed to get a lot of operations in space. Before we dive into the new layout, let's have a look where we came from. With the initial inquiry, the client sent me this image where he basically has a tabletop design. So it's good to know that this is where the mindset is right now. And he plans to add an extension here on the left and I think extend this here in the front as well. Hence, he sent me this design of what he think can work in space. Now, this is not a roast video, so we're not going to do that. But after several iterations, he also mentioned Waterville Yard is a location he finds interesting and it could be a good place to base the layout on. What makes Waterville Yard so unique is that we have the Waterville subdivision going that way. Then we have another line here going to the paper mill over in that direction. Then down here, we have the East Augusta industrial track or lead or spur or something along those lines, because Augusta is just right there. There are several industries here. You can pause your screen, look it up. It's very interesting. Have a look on Google Maps. But this is what we're going to use as a base for the layout. So after a series of sketches, came to this concept. As you see, it still has the U-shape, somewhat tabletop design, but we did make it an all-around the, well, not all around the room, but an enclosed layout. So we have a liftgate, drawbridge, or a swing gate there on the left. And this really adds to the realism of the design itself, because the train only, in theory, goes through the scenery once. Now we did want continuous running and also in double track main line, so that is possible when you go here into staging. So yes, we also have staging. Now as this is the tabletop design in the garage, we have access all the way along the outside as well. And that's one of the requests from the client, is to be able to operate the layout with two people. So then one could be here working on the outside, switching Huhtamaki and the paper mill here as it is drawn, and someone else can be in the inside switching the yard and serving the other industries. And not to mention, the second person can also be working the staging yard as well. Now remember, we had the 4 tracks leading into Waterville Yard. So one would be here in the south, and this one would go here to Oakland off layout. Just don't have space to model everything. And then the other 2, one of them would actually be the main line that continues, and the paper mill industrial lead would go off here to the side. So it's all more or less represented and more or less in the right locations. The biggest change is actually that we put the paper mill here on this side, because paper mills are large industries and it would suit really well to have a little bit more space. So we can have a siding here, so we can do runarounds and then switch it like that, add a bit to the complexity of the industry. And we can also park it against this backdrop here that separates the staging from the rest of the layout. By doing that, the industry will look much larger and we don't have to model the entire thing. As where if we had it here on the right, there was no backdrop, so you actually have to model quite a big chunk of it or have it all off layout. But now we can put Phoenix feeds here and chive steel, which are prototypical. I also wanted a wood chipper, or this could be anything really, also a scrapyard or another industry, and that's placed here. Note this is on the lead going to Phoenix feeds, so you don't want to have too many cars in here to be able to switch Phoenix feeds. Now we'll come back to the yard in a bit. Some things did change. This yard throat changed a bit. I just removed this number 6 turnout to compress it a little bit, so we can add length to the yard tracks right here. And it's the same on the bottom. I really wanted to use this super elevated track piece that Kato Unitrack has. It's from here to here, but that meant I cannot start the turnouts here. So I later replaced this, as you'll see, so I can start the turnouts earlier and thus have longer staging tracks. Basically the same reason as up front right there. So here's the final design. Let's go through this and I'll explain a little bit more how one can operate such a layout. Starting here with Waterville in the north, let's just zoom in a bit. In the yard itself, the track Some tracks are multi-purpose. So this one right here, exactly what these yellow engines are, is actually also is the main line, double track main line, but it's also the yard lead. So in case you use it as a yard lead all through traffic, we'll have to use the double crossover here, go around, and then just here out of sight, use the crossover and switch to the other track. So this is part of the main line. It can also be a siding, passing siding, or to do runarounds if you have to. And this industry, the transfer facility right here is also switched from that track right there. And on top of that, we also have a platform for passenger trains right there. The client really wanted to run passenger trains and found a platform to be enough. We don't need an entire station, but I did want a platform to be able to stop a train and have some purpose. So that goes right there. Now this here goes off layout to Oakland. And in case you would extend this, for example, with a staging, or if you actually would have more layout there, then I would add another crossover right here. So you can basically, arriving from Oakland, cross over and be on the right side of the track right there. Otherwise, you have to go all the way across the layout to the crossover that we have here on the bottom. But that's not the case, so this is how it is. Then we have another main line here, the second track. This could also be the arrival departure track, as you can reach it easily from both tracks on this side and from both tracks on that side using the double crossover. But it could also be a yard track. If you have extra cars, some flow over, you can put it there. And then we have 1, 2, 3. You could add that one, 4 tracks for cars. Mind you, it's not a big layout. We don't have a lot of industries. So we don't need to have a lot of space in the yard per se. So that gives us 4. Then here we have a relatively large engine facility with 2 fueling tracks. The second one is also a switch back here to the facility where all kinds of lubricants and gas is offloaded and loaded for the engine facility. If you look up Waterville in the prototype, this is actually a massive, massive facility. That's why it has its own tracks dedicated oil and gas. We decided to include it in this layout, although this is not a massive facility, but it does give a nice industry switch. And then, of course, on the right, we have a turntable as well. That does fit quite nicely in here. It's good to show off your engines with a turntable like that. Now, zooming out a little bit behind this transfer, yeah, we talked about that. And here behind the entire yard, we have the Huhtamaki mill. That is, as in the prototype, quite a long structure. We condensed it a bit, and it was longer before, but at least it has 2 dedicated spurs to spot some cars, and a bit of a longer lead here in case you have some overflow again. Moving to the right, we cross the river. Note this is quite a bit of a dense scene with a lot happening, which is in contrast to the other side, where we just have only a bridge and river. We need to balance the layout out a bit and to give some context. We do have the river here, and the river also is up here, and the river is back here again. And actually, the river makes a bend, and you see it here. We just modeled the riverbank as it flows through the entire prototype as well. It's a bit more of a straight line, to be honest, in the prototype, but at least it's represented nicely in the design. So here we have Phoenix Feeds, Chives Steel, and the wood chipper. Normally, I don't really like to have 2 related industries, so the chipper would serve the paper mill on the same layout as in real life. These would be very far away from each other, and it does provide for some local traffic within the layout, which is nice as well. Here is a single crossover. I specifically added a single one and not a double one, as I strongly believe that you should not always have all opportunities to go in all the directions, as it's often not needed. And to have a little bit of restrictions is also nice. If you can always do everything all the time, it's not really fun. Now here we go into the paper mill. So we have 4 different spurs here. This is the power plant. Here we have all the dry powders and whatnot, receivables for the paper to make it shine nicely. And this is the shipping. So I will receive box cars. Do have a look at my guide to the paper industry if you want to learn more about what all these specific buildings do. Links down below. And then here on the right, we have pulp receivables where you can receive pulp cars. This extra track here is purely a lead to do some runaround movements here on the set of tracks right there. And of course, when in doubt, add a parking lot, as we also have plenty of parking lots in the prototype. Now, staging is a little bit of no thrill staging. 2 tracks in the inner loop, 3 in the outer loop. And signing here in case you want to have one really long train that goes all the way to the end, for example, intermodal or something like that, a unit train. That would be nice to run around the layout. Now let's have a look at the schematic. Here's a schematic of the exact same layout that you just saw. So we have staging right here. As you see, we have double track mainline going through the entire layout. We have the double crossover right here, the single crossover right there. We went through all of this. Sappi paper is right there, the Waterville yard, etc. So what happens now? And it's time to start filling in some jobs. So starting at the yard, as we have quite a large terminal here, we can actually originate and terminate some trains from here. So where they go to, one of them could go, for example, from Waterville Yard, just purely to Sappi Paper to switch the cars that are in this entire yard and then bring it back. We can have another train departing from Waterville Yard and basically just switching all the local industries right here and also everything right there. That's one option. Or another option is to have all these industries served by the local that would depart from staging, would chug along here, and then if it's in this direction, it would probably switch back and do a chipper, chives, as there's no runaround for Phoenix or Pride, and then it would chug along again. It could then perhaps do the transfer yard because there is a runaround here for him to do that. It could also typically speaking pick up Phoenix feeds, but then we'll have to push it all the way until we get to the runaround right here. But continuing from staging and switching some industries here and here, yes or no, we'll then continue to go back to staging, which is there, and then back here to staging. And that would be that local train. You can also do it again, obviously, in the other direction. And then in this direction, pass by Sappi paper. So you could then pass it and just spot some cars there. They don't necessarily have to be at the right locations. The said train from Waterville that switches Sappi. So you just spot some cars and pick up some other cars if they're ready or if you can easily access them. So after Sappi paper, you continue this direction. And there is a runaround, so you could go from here and then switch Huhtamaki, I'll get it, and the transfer track, and or even pick up some cars and spot some cars that are waiting for you at the yard. And then continue, you could switch via this complicated zigzag Phoenix feeds, although I think it will probably be switched by Waterville Yard, as it is a complicated maneuver. Takes too much time and blocks too much main lines. Because as you do this, you do have your cars sitting on the track right here because you're only going to take the engine and maybe 1 or 2 cars. And then go back to staging. And then lastly, another train could be a manifest train that leads from staging. Don't know if manifest train is the right term for that, but you purely go from staging, go to the yard, so you drop some and you pick up some cars, and then you go straight back to staging. And that can also happen in the other direction, where you just go straight to the yard, drop some cars, pick some cars, and then go back to staging. So there we already have quite a few different jobs. So we have the yard job is number 1. The specific Sappi paper job that leaves from the yard is number 2. Then we have a eastbound, a westbound local. We could have from staging the eastbound and westbound manifest. There's also the passenger train that, of course, goes to the platform. You could have an eastbound and a westbound passenger train. So to summarize this track plan, if you have some kind of tabletop shape, try to make it let's say around the layout style with some kind of lift gate, lift bridge, because it just gives you a little bit more of that realistic feel to the layout. Another conclusion from my side is that you can get a lot of prototype in a relatively small track plan and a small layout. And yes, it is busy. There is a lot going on here. There's a lot of track up here. We got industries behind it, but we do have some open areas here. We have a nice river scene as well, but you can get a lot in space like this. And also the staging, especially that the layout is accessible from both ends, so from this side as well, to switch this Japanese industry right there and this industry and this industry right there really helps. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this design, and so is the client. So that's all great news. He also requested for the electrical drawings for this layout. That's another service that we do for custom designs, or if you have your own design and you just want to have the electrical plan worked out for signals, blocks, dispatcher panels, you name it. On that bombshell, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.